demon queen from a different dimension and owner of Club Pact. Nightclubbies. It's more like a bar, but it's also a nightclub. Got a dance floor and everything.
I see. And I just realized I was still muted when I was saying all that stuff. Oh, God. All right, get the scuff out early. All right, hello, everybody. Lord Rexworth here. First stream 2024. That sums up everything. This is Zoe the Demon Fox. She's with me. And we're going to be doing some reading ASMR tonight of a book that she wrote called The Realm, A Tale of Blood and Souls. So thank you all for joining me. Hopefully, everybody on your side of stream, Zoe, heard me. So yeah.
Yeah, everything is unmuted on my end. Hi,
Okay,
Jack.
yeah. I've got a few more toggles that I've got to and switches that I've got to throw here and do the whole jiggery pokery thing before I can truly say that I'm live and streaming and stuff's going out the way it's supposed to.
For VTubers, it's going to be scuffed all the way through.
Hmm. Not a matter of if, a matter of when. But like I was
Yes,
telling one of
first
my
of the
gen mates, Scuff is really just a test, an impromptu test of your improvisation skills.
It's like a quick time event video game.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're a fan of Shenmue, yeah, it's now IRL for VTubers in the form of Scuff. Anyways, plugging the usual things for me. Website is lordrexworth.com, lordrexworth.com. Do follow me across all platforms: Twitch, YouTube, Kick, Twitter. You can find everything there. lordrexworth.com. Right, is there anything that you want to plug before we get started here, Zoe?
No, I don't do plugs
Okay.
yet.
Yet. Interesting. And very mysterious.
Cassie has reminded me that I have a redeem called Death of the Author, which forces me to stop whatever game I'm playing, go read something. And she
Oh.
said, "What if I redeem Death of the Author while you're already reading?"
Um I might possibly rip a hole in the space-time continuum, so
I guess I'll
maybe
just read harder.
yes, we're going to read even harder. Yes. Let's see. Right. So this is we've got approximately 209 pages here of material. So chat, be advised, we're not going to get this done in one sitting, but that's all right. You can keep coming back. We can more than likely make this a weekly thing, and yeah. So with that, let us get started. Um, I'm not sure how we want to handle this. You want me to just keep going and just stop me at certain points? Is that how does that sound?
Thank you for the raid, Mortimer. The colored bits are usually dialogue, so
Okay.
I guess for a bit we'll just go up to a colored point, stop, figure out who's gonna be that person.
Okay. I mean, I could certainly take the masculine roles, and if you want to take the part of the feminine roles, maybe.
I have a lot more female characters than males, so you're definitely gonna get a couple girls.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll handle the narration portion. So yeah. Let's see.
I think Asbestos here will be a good character for you. He's like the cyan there.
Yeah. I'm gonna try and channel the thicker Scottish brogue for him. Um, let's see. I've got some notes here that this is a remaster of sorts of an earlier edition that you did a while back. Give us the backstory on this. How did this come about? What's the story behind the story, as it were?
I literally was just sitting here one day as like, what if angels, demons, and humans are fighting each other?
Hmm.
The humble
So,
beginnings of any of my stories are literally that simple. It's just like, what if this concept?
hmm.
And then it just grows massively.
Hey, that's sometimes simplicity is best when starting out. I should know. That's how my own VTuber character and design and what little lore there is came into being. Right. So, chat. Just a quick disclaimer. There's going to be some rather dark content up ahead. The fights we're going to be describing are rather brutal, and there will be some scenes of, of mental instability. That's what I have here in my notes. So, if any of this bothers you, you have been warned, and viewer and listener discretion is advised. So, with all of that, let us begin. The Realm, A Tale of Blood and Souls, by Zoe the Demon Fox. Prologue. Ancient armor, battle-worn and dented, clinked softly as a lone figure walked up a grassy hill. As the figure crested it, it stopped, holding a metal gauntlet up to shield a helmet visor from the sunlight. Down the hill and across a pleasant meadow lay a gigantic, square ruin built of blackest obsidian, the remains of what was once a majestic and ornate pillar. Not too far from it was a small, unassuming dockyard, a few sailboats moored, and the figure leaned forward a bit and let out a small sigh, seen a rather distinct boat. The armored man began to walk down the hill towards the ruins of the pillar. To an outsider, this place, the Isle of Pillars, was nothing of value, but the ruins of the Black Pillar held a secret. As the man approached, a wooden ramp came into view, leading underneath the ruins and to a set of metal double doors. The man swung them open and stepped into a large room that could only be considered a bar. His unseen gaze looked over the various people gathered here, drinking, reading, and conversating.
Good
Guild
Master Asbestos, you're back. I think I fucked up the color, sorry. Asbestos is blue.
Okay, you take the light blue, that's fine.
How did your meeting with the Saint go?
Asbestos returned his gaze forward and looked down slightly. A silver-haired boy that couldn't possibly be older than 17 or 18 winters looked up into his dark visor with a slight smile. And yet the boy still wore a leather patch over his left eye, a reminder. Asbestos shrugged his metal arms. Went about as expected, lad. Asbestos glanced around the bar room for a moment. Callisto, where's your master?
Miss Da Vinci's in her quarters, sir. She's trying to get some sleep, I believe.
Asbestos nodded.
And, Mrs.
Asbestos gripped Callisto's shoulder gently. I know. Thank you, Callisto. Do me a favor. Go find Cypher, would you? Have her come to my quarters. Callisto nodded, and Asbestos brushed past him. There were several long hallways that branched off from the bar, and the one Asbestos took brought him through a gigantic common room before another long hallway took him past a set of dorms. At the end was his own quarters. Callisto had followed him part of the way.
Did you find an artifact, sir?
Aye. The Saint's claiming that it's in Silverland. Gonna need a Sylvan's expertise.
I'll find her immediately then, sir.
With a smile and a salute, Callisto had ran off to comply. Alone in his office, Asbestos sat heavily behind a big wooden desk, not a single shred of his armor removed. A gauntlet pulled a map forward as Asbestos exhaled in exhaustion before looking it over. The Isle of Pillars. That's where his guild was hidden, far to the east, off the coast of Midheim, better known as the Kingdom of the Pact-Breaker. North of them, curving over the isle protectively, was Sigmata, a kingdom built with fanatical faith in the angels. Asbestos shook his head slightly, turning his gaze to the northwestern edge of the continent. There lay Garani, a frozen wasteland and home to the Northmen, brutal yet cunning, and intelligent savages that show their hostile homeland that it should fear them as much as the kingdoms around them feared the Northmen. That wasn't even mentioning that the Geronites almost entirely pledged loyalty and faith to a certain demon that happened to live here within the guild's own walls.
I love how you pronounce Garony, because I can't roll my R's.
That's a little bit of the Scottish in me. Finally was Silverland, a long narrow island off the western coastline of Midheim. It was a place of evil and dark magic, birthplace of necromancy, and ruled by Urza Barrow, the undead brother of Midheim's own king. Asbestos tapped a spot on the map. Darkwell, the capital of Silverland, surrounded on all sides by a magical mist that teemed with monstrous beings, a mist that only native Sylvans could navigate safely, and even then, if the magic mist deemed their intentions unjust, it could kill them just as easily as an outsider. Yet here in this damned mist, there was apparently an artifact. Welcome in, the only giant banana. Welcome into chat. Chibi chibi choppa choppa doobie doobie dabba dabba magic dude doobie doobie boom boom boom.
Oh, I should open your stream so I can see your chat.
I guess that's banana ease for hello. Hello. Asbestos' door swung open, and he looked into the lithe, cloaked form of a woman. They threw off the hood, unshrouding their face, revealing piercing red eyes, reddish-brown hair, and, most distinct, 2 fox ears, standing proudly atop her head. Asbestos sighed. "What do you want, demon?" She waltzed up to his desk and crossed her arms with a soft smirk.
Simple. I want to join the expedition to Silverland. I heard there's an artifact near Darkwell. You know what'll happen if our dear pal Urza wakes up while mercenaries are poking around in his mist. Progress will go faster if I help out.
Normally, Asbestos despised this demon and would go out of his way to decline her. But firstly, his word wasn't binding. He couldn't stop her if she decided to go anyway. And secondly, whilst he hated to admit it, she had a point. There was no point arguing. Fine, go ahead. Cypher's leading the expedition. I know you hate following the orders of mortals, but I kindly ask you to at least pretend you're listening to her. The fox demon scoffed and then grinned.
Come now, Asbestos, I'm not that bad. Besides, corpses aren't going to give me any blood to satisfy myself. I've no reason to go rogue and do my own thing. I'll go find them.
She inhaled.
Dear God, how'd I pronounce Icelandic?
I think it's pronounced Algengor Bjor Gildi.
That's what I was thinking. Algengor Bjor Gildi.
Reality itself ripped apart behind her as the red-tinted rift opened up, swirling softly. Still grinning, the fox demon stepped backwards through it before it closed. Alone again, Asbestos sighed and pulled out a blank paper, writing a few things down. That's mean banana ease of hello is banana eel. Nasa, welcome in. Welcome in. Asbestos wondered why he ever let the dark saint of blood begin to lodge here. She was so much more than one of the 9 dark saints, much more than even a greater demon. He supposed his original reasoning boiled down to the fact that she had amnesia. It was a hell of a thing to lose one's memories, a constant of life that affected even angel and demon, not just humans. Asbestos fidgeted slightly. All that mattered, and for the sake of everyone's safety, was that she never remembered who she was. But one day she'll remember. What then? A problem for another day. For now, Asbestos had more expeditions to plan and artifacts to locate. After all, that same demon, along with the High Saint of Change, Lady Calico, had together contracted Blackrock Mercenary Guild to locate the artifacts, and Asbestos had a reputation to uphold. Blackrock never failed a contract.
I'll read this codex so you don't kill your voice over this 2 or 3 hours.
All right, then.
Codex of Knowledge. Artifacts. Artifacts are the collective term for any weapon or item that originated from heaven or hell that began mysteriously manifesting in the mortal realm of essence. The majority of artifacts collected tend to be relics from the ancient war, a three-way conflict between angel, human, and demon, orchestrated by the Queen of Hell. Whilst normal items in the hands of non-humans, many but not all of these war relics offer supernatural boons and debilitating drawbacks in the hands of mortals. Growing concern for the power mortals could wield by gathering artifacts led to the Great Hunt, a contract signed by both Lady Calico, Holy Saint of Change, and Zalira, better known as Zoe, the Dark Saint of Blood, enlisting the entire mercenary guild of Blackrock and securing artifacts to protect them from not only the surrounding human kingdoms of Ganymede, Midheim, and Sigmara and Sylvaland, but from power-hungry angels and demons also seeking to find a gain from the madness. Artifacts appear at random throughout Essence, sometimes relics from the Old War, sometimes everyday items, seemingly stolen from heaven and hell and deposited in the mortal realm. An interesting note is that these artifacts appear only in the realm, where the ancient war was felt the hardest. The Outlands remain blissfully unaware of the true purpose and origin of any artifacts they do randomly locate, due to the incredibly small sprinkling that have manifested there. A final note is that, except for a few extremely rare cases, angels cannot touch demonic artifacts and vice versa for demons. Exposure results in burns, and prolonged contact results in death.
Chapter 1. The Hunt for the Aegis. The expedition's journey was rather uneventful. A handful of longboats, their design modified from Gerenite longboats, brought a healthy mixture of mercenaries to the shores of Silverland. Blackrock's manpower consisted of criminals, refugees, and disillusioned individuals from the Four Kingdoms. After only a couple of days of travel, using rivers that stretched across Midheim, the expedition found itself in the Mortis Sea, and from there on the southeastern coastline of Silverland. From there, the longboats were left behind with a small encampment, and the main force began their careful trek across the land of the dead. Silverland's earth was surprisingly fertile and covered in farmland, despite the sickly grey appearance of the grass and the trees that seemingly could bear fruit but not leaves, likely all due to Urza Berrow's magic. The expedition was blessed with good luck, encountering no wandering mages seeking out necromantic ritual ingredients or chasing wayward experiments or other far worse reasons to be out and about. With Cypher's guidance, the expedition camped between two dead hills overlooking the main road to Darkwell, the damn near opaque mist that surrounded the shadowy city. Night fell, watchers were posted, and the expedition's leader retired to her tent. The silver-haired woman was a veteran and had served the Blackrock Guild for as long as she could remember. Even being only in her mid-30s, she had become a legend, known to uphold the reputation of the guild personally. She'd never failed a contract, and would go beyond the call of duty to make sure she upheld that. Her plan to find the Aegis, though, could wait until morning. For now, Cypher lay on her ground bedding and pulled off her hood and face mask, letting out a soft sigh.
So, I was wondering, how deep do you think we'll have to go into that stupid mist tomorrow?
Cypher didn't even sit up, only turning her head slightly to see the Saint of Blood, Zoe, standing within the tent, idly running her sword across her bruised wrist. The merc shrugged.
Can't say, Dark Saints. Only a Sylvan can navigate the mist, but since we've got non-Sylvans in tow, who knows how the mist will react. On top of that, as far as I was aware, the artifact is inside the mist.
Zoe impaled her sword into the ground and leaned on it, thinking for a moment.
Well, as a demon, a little misdirection charm isn't going to do much to me. I could take a peek by myself. If that's what you want to do, Dark Saints.
Cypher closed her eyes and put her hands under her head. Zoe crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow, but smirked slightly.
Not gonna try to stop me. Saints, I learned a long time ago telling you to do anything is a lost cause. Besides, if anything, the main concern would be you getting hurt.
One of Cypher's gray eyes opened, peering at the demon.
As a greater demon and a Saint of Blood on top of that, I would hope you can handle a few Mistwalkers by yourself.
Zoe started to grin.
You have a point there. I bet I'll find the artifact. No.
Zoe frowned.
But you can have your fun, but don't pull me into one of your bets. Azariah is still recovering from the last one.
Zoe snorted.
He's a necromancer, he'll be fine. But if you insist.
The demon made an exaggerated shrug, and with a soft red flash, ceased to be there. Cypher exhaled. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. Despite the sun rising high and bright in the sky, Silverland still remained bleak, grey, and overcast. That was simply the way of things. Cypher split the expedition into 5 teams, each headed by a Sylvan for navigation through the mist, Sigmarites for their words of power, and filling the rest of the ranks with Midhamites and Gedonites as defenders. The Dark Saint had already vanished by the time preparations were complete, but it wasn't important. With a hand signal, Cypher began the hunt, and the 5 teams stepped confidently into the mist. Urza's magical mist was interesting, more like an exceedingly thick fog, making it impossible to see more than about 7 or 8 feet ahead. Only a human, born of this vile land, possessed the ability to navigate the mists. Outsiders would become turned around and round by the dark magics until one of the undead creatures that lay in wait found and killed them. Yet even then, if the mist sensed a threat from Sylvans, it could affect them as well. The trek through the mist was silent. The only sounds, that of the group's footsteps, and the random clanking of armor and weaponry. Cypher herself idly gripped a crossbow as she stared straight ahead, making only slight adjustments as a Sigmarite, 3 Midhamites, and 2 Gedonites followed carefully behind. It was hard to tell how much time had truly passed within the mist, as the sunlight had a harder time piercing the mist than even piercing the dark clouds of Silverland. Cypher's group began to get anxious, and eventually a Gedonite walked up to her side, the 7-foot-tall Northman gripping the axe holstered beneath his fur cloak. I'm sick of this. We've been walking around for hours. I haven't seen a single thing, not even the dead.
Hours are unlikely. Besides, if you run off, you will find the dead.
Cypher started to glance at the ground at random. She couldn't exactly keep the group in line, as Gedonites tended to be notoriously stubborn. That time was better used searching for the artifact.
I fear no necromancer.
Cypher sighed, then looked up and stopped suddenly, her eyes widening. She held up a hand, and those that followed stopped as well. The team's sole Sigmarite walked up on Cypher's other side.
It's a dude if you want to give him some kind of, priesty voice.
Something the matter, ma'am?
We've ended up closer to Darkwell than I would like.
There were a few noises of fear and acknowledgement, yet Cypher picked up on far fewer noises than expected. She looked behind her, shocked to realize part of the group was gone. All that remained were herself, the Sigmarite, and 2 of the Gedonites.
Yet, where'd everyone go?
The farthest Gedonite glanced behind himself and scratched his beard. They were right behind us mere seconds ago. What damn magic is this? There was a thud nearby, and the 4 immediately whirled towards the sound, weapons unsheathed, and Cypher's crossbow ready to fire. Who goes there? There was an unholy screech and another thud. One of the Northmen raised his ruined axe, high with a hearty laugh. Ha ha ha! Come out of the shadows, beast, and face me! There were several more thuds. Then suddenly, a wide-eyed creature with rows of jagged teeth, grey in flesh, and long, spindly fingers dashed out of the mist, sprinting towards the Northman, grasping for his throat. With a toothy grin, an axe swung down and created a sickening splat as it caved in the Mistwalker's skull. The creature fell to the ground, oozing thick and sludge like red blood. Another howl rent the air asunder, echoing around as the answering howls sounded as well.
We're surrounded. Staying back to back so we don't lose each other.
The Sigmarite said a quiet prayer before turning his head slightly to Cypher. Do you think the Lich King has awakened?
We're too deep into the mist for me to see the sky, so I don't know. If he is awake, escaping Silverland will be excessively more difficult.
The crazed howls increased their unholy crescendo before abruptly falling into silence. The 4 mercenaries grasped their weapons, anxiously waiting. After a few moments, they tensed as the mist cleared itself in a radius around them. The tension faded as they saw the missing members of their team dead, yet surrounded by a significant number of dead mistwalkers, and of course, the dark saint of blood, pulling her jagged blade out of a corpse and baying at the slimy echo of life dripping from her blade tip.
Like I said, ugh, undead don't interest me.
She looked up at the others, then kicked at something metal and round that was embedded into the dirt.
Found the artifact, by the way. I need one of you to pick it up. It's angelic.
There were sighs of relief from Cypher and the Sigmarite. The latter walked over to dig out the artifact while the Gedonites stared at Zoe in reverence before raising their axes with honorable cries. Zoe giggled.
Nice to see you as well, fellas.
One of them walked closer. Blooded one, it is good to see a familiar face. This mist is diabolical. Zoe patted the man's shoulder.
I'm happy a few of you survived.
Her expression turned grim as she looked towards Cypher.
I've got bad news. The other groups are dead, and there's some angels tailing us. And,
She pointed skyward.
Urza's awake.
The 5 of them looked up, and Cypher felt her cold heart almost stop. Above Darkwell, the clouds were black and swirling, darkening the already murky skies even further. A deep horn sounded from the city, clashing against a beautiful bell.
I killed a couple of the angels already, but forget that. The Eternal Guard's gonna run us down out here. We need to leave, now.
The humans began running, following behind Cypher. Zoe hesitated for a moment before clenching her fist and following after them.
This isn't how I imagined my day going.
As they fled the mist, running for their encampment, they found it already assailed by the undead on all sides, and mercenaries were dropping like flies. Zoe teleported herself closer to Cypher as they stood at the top of the hill.
Get as many marks to their horses as you can.
Zoe looked at the 2 Gedonites with a sadistic grin.
Looks like you two get to fight side by side with your guide.
One of them pressed their axe against the chest with a slight bow. The blood will flow, blooded one. The other did the same with his axe. Doesn't matter from where it flows, only that it flows. Zoe's bruised wrist throbbed slightly, and her grin widened.
Your deeds will be remembered by your clans, guys.
She turned to Cypher to say something, but the veteran mercenary and the artifact-toting Sigmarite had already sprinted down the hill towards the horses. Noting that the artifact had been recovered, the camp's defenders began to fight harder, loading wounded and supplies onto horses and abandoning the camp. The survivors began to split as the Gedonites, inspired by the Saint of Blood, elected to remain behind to buy time. One by one, they fell in defense of their comrades, without a single regret in their minds. They were fighting for the guild, after all, a clan that had taken them in when their own had abandoned them. They did not fear the end. They embraced it. As Cypher found her horse and galloped away, she looked back only once to see that none dared surrender ground. A tear came to her eye, but she quickly wiped away and looked forward once more. Due to Ezra Barrow awakening, his most elite knight necromancers, known as the Eternal Guard, had ridden out, their undead horses much faster than even the specially bred ones of Blackrock. Being a Sylvan, Cypher had enough knowledge of her homeland to avoid them, but she was delayed many times on the way to the coastline. As she got there, she was horrified to see that the longboats were already gone. The camp hastily pulled up, and ahead of her, the Sigmarite, a simple zombie, walking around with the ornate silver shield still in his arm. With a soft sigh, she put a crossbow bolt in his head and slipped off her horse, walking over and picking up the artifact herself. She sighed, unsure what to do now. Footsteps walked across the sand and stopped next to her.
Well, this is a problem. Thinking of voices is hard.
Are you taking this one?
Do you got something like pompous and righteous?
Have I? Who do you think you're talking to? Indeed, it is a problem. For you, demon. Cypher and Zoe both turned, finding themselves face to face with four angels, white feathered wings, golden halos, ornate swords raised. The one that looked like the leader stepped forward. You will be unhanding the Aegis peacefully, or you and the human under your thrall will be killed, and the artifact taken by force. Zoe grinned and shouldered her sword, holding up her left arm to show off the bruise on her wrist.
I don't make thralls, pal. I make packs.
It matters not. The human is trapped here, and you cannot touch the artifact to carry it through one of your rifts. There is no escape.
I realized a plot hole here that she could have just made a rift and shoved Cypher through it, but...
Oh, this is much more interesting, though.
Dark Saint, it's over.
Cypher started to unbuckle the Aegis' straps, but Zoe grabbed her shoulder and winked before taking a few steps forward, letting her blade drop into the sand.
Do I get any last words? I mean, it's only fair, right?
There was hesitation, and the three battle angels behind him clearly were not willing to let this occur, but the lead angel nodded.
Thank you.
Zoe turned her back, slipping a golden coin from an inner pocket and flipping it into the water, whispering,
Watcher, my damned soul calls to you.
She turned back to face the angels with a soft smile on her face. Are you done?
Oh yeah, quite done. Oh wait, you mean done calling for a ship, or done looking at your stupid faces?
She picked up her sword as Cypher took a few steps backwards to be out of the way.
I do have one more question. How does angelic blood taste? I've always wondered. I will bite your shoulder and turn you into a muffin. What the fuck, Cassie? Don't turn me into a muffin, turn Rex into a muffin.
I don't want to be a muffin, though.
What would you rather be, a cinnamon roll?
I could be talked into a cinnamon roll, yeah.
Codex of Knowledge, Warpstone. These are the drugs of this universe. Almost immediately after the 9 known regions of Hell were created, a pocket dimension violently manifested, its sole access point being a chaotic portal within Garany, which also led to the frost-covered, monster-infested land that Garany is. Within the pocket realm existed only two things, a vacuum and an object, the Eye of the Warp. The Eye is a gigantic blue crystal, infused to overflow with demonic energy. The crystal goes through an infinite cycle of rebirth, shattering and reforming, discarding random fragments. These fragments, through unknown means, spread themselves throughout heaven, hell, and essence, where they take root in dark places like an infestation, growing and spreading, and in some cases, causing a land to warp due to the demonic influence of the crystals. This so-called Warpstone is the second half of a catalyst that created magic in the mortal realm, the first being the Arcane Trees, created by a sister pocket containing the Tree of Life. Warpstone comes in many colors and affinities. While any color can have any affinity, the strength of the demonic energy within is dependent on the color. The most common color, and also the weakest, is green Warpstone, whereas the strongest color is blue Warpstone, as they are closest in power and hue to the eye itself. The following are the naturally occurring colors and their uses. Green Warpstone. The most numerous and easiest to find, these green crystals are the most commonly used by demon smiths, ritual casters, and eccentric human inventors. They are also the most common gateway into a condition known as Warpstone addiction. Orange Warpstone. While they can be found without affinities, Orange Warpstone is most commonly discovered with Flame affinity. They are an excellent catalyst to create Hell Flame within demon forges, and are significantly more potent for consumption than green crystals. Yellow Warpstone. Most commonly associated with Electric affinity, Yellow Warpstone's entertainment value is barely above orange, and they have been known to be used almost exclusively by the Architect, a lesser demon that dwells in Hell's Gate. Purple Warpstone. Boasting a magical potency higher than the lesser colors beneath it, Purple Warpstone is highly sought after by demon smiths and the occasional insane human mage. A single unique Purple Warpstone exists in the form of Pox, a spirit sip belonging to the Dark Saint of Corruption and oozing her demonic aspect of corruption. Blue Warpstone. Other than the essence of Apocalypse, no official records of Blue Warpstone exist. It is likely that knowing their power, those that do discover them hide them away. While it is true there are numerous uses for warpstone, there are also many risks. The most prominent of risks is contained within black warpstone, an exceedingly rare color that could be seen as merging with several other colors. Historians have never been able to accurately gauge the true power of black warpstone, and yet uses have been found for it, utilized by unique individuals who will not give up their secrets. The second largest risk is warpstone addiction, and a disease it creates known as warp rot. The entertainment value of warpstone was discovered by accident by an exceedingly stressed demonsmith. When crushed and willingly accepted into the body, microscopic fragments of whatever color of warpstone are absorbed into the body, creating a sense of euphoria and pleasure that increases both with quantity and quality. Addiction is never far off, and those that become dependent will be forever so, as the original fragments will awaken from dormancy. This fragment awakening is known as warp rot, wherein warpstone will slowly grow within the body, causing a slow and agonizingly painful death, as the crystals rip through organs and flesh over a period of months. Their dark energy keeping the individual alive until there's little left to retain as alive. Renewed consumption of warpstone seems to keep the fragments dormant, and in some individuals, the warp rot can be reversed back to a dormant state. Some individuals have been recorded to have staved off their addiction for upwards of 1 year of the human calendar, before warp rot begins to take effect. There are in fact a few unique warpstones that do not fit the accounts of how these crystals function. The most famous example being Lunaris Solaris, a gigantic, perfectly round warpstone anchored into the ceiling of the cavernous realm of Hell. Its true color is unknown, but it seems to mimic the sun and moon of the mortal realm, down to even copying the moon's phases. During the day, it shines bright with white light, and as night falls, parts of it blacken. Another unique warpstone is the red warpstone. It does not occur naturally from eye fragments, but instead rarely springs up in places that blood has personally been spilled by the dark saint of blood. It is akin to green warpstone demonic energy, but when infused with blood, is shown to shine brightly enough to act as a light source. Finally is the Essence of Apocalypse, a trinket that once belonged to the Queen of Hell before her untimely disappearance. It was said to be a catalyst, more than a fragment, but rather a piece of the Eye of the Warp itself, and its sole purpose was to contain the Queen of Hell's power, allowing her to access demonic form so powerful it would rip her apart were it not for the trinket. A final note to be made is that warpstone of any variety is a primary catalyst in causing angels to fall, a weakness caused by the after effects of the Hidden War. The most famous fall was the Saint of Prosperity and her subsequent transformation into the Dark Saint of Corruption.
Chapter 2. A Trip Down the River. Cypher stayed behind Zoe, loading her crossbow, but not quite sure how to handle the situation. Meanwhile, the greater demon simply grinned, shouldering her blade, one hand on her hip.
What's the matter, boys? Never fought a demon before?
There was a long hesitation. The confidence the angels had held seemed to have faded. White wings fidgeted anxiously. Finally, one yelled out a battle cry and flapped his wings hard, raising into the sky, then propelling him forward. Zoe grinned and swung her blade overhead, creating a bit of dust as it slammed into the ground in front of her as the angel passed. The angel started to hover, wings flapping idly. Then it turned to face its comrades. Run! A bloody line etched itself perfectly down the armored angel's middle from head to toe, before with a sickening splatter, he split in half, blood gushing all around. Zoe stood up, shouldering her sword again, as a few drops of blood dripped onto the grey grass under her feet.
Next.
There was a long hesitation before all three angels charged at once, this time folding their wings and remaining grounded. The first to reach the demon swung with as much force as he could muster, but Zoe was faster, and with an upward swing, cleaved both his hands away from the sword hilt. Quickly switching her grip to reverse, Zoe shifted her feet to spin her around as she quickly crouched, her blade meeting the knees of the next angel and severing the legs. She bounced back to her feet just in time to raise her blade and lock it against the final angel. With only one hand, she held back the angelic warrior's two-handed grip.
So sorry it had to end like this, but whoever sent you idiots should have realized it'll take more than a few rank-and-file pricks to deal with a Dark Saint. Thanks for the entertainment, though. I've been wanting to spill a little bit of blood, actual blood today.
The angel felt his heart fill with terror and took a step back, signaling his doom. Zoe shoved him, then with a fancy flourish, spun herself around switching her grip back to drag her blade through the angel's midsection. His armor split in half, and a thin, bloody line crossed his stomach. He gasped.
Better hold that before it opens.
The angel dropped his sword and clasped his hands over his stomach quickly. Zoe wasted no time, swinging a final time, cleaving his head from his shoulders, and watching his body fall to its knees, then onto its side. Cypher was too professional to break down in awe, but she still gripped her crossbow tightly. Although the Dark Saint had dwelled at the guild for several years, Cypher had never actually witnessed her fight. She was fast. A few moments later, Cypher quickly spun round, aiming a crossbow at a rift that had ripped itself open on the water. Zoe walked over and gently pushed the crossbow down, smiling.
This is a friend. Calm down.
Out of the rift drifted a ferry of sorts, almost akin to a Gedanite longboat, just lacking in seats and ruined shields. On board was a single individual by the steering oar, a silver-haired woman with wolf ears. She waved at the pair as the boat drifted close enough to be boarded. Cypher and Zoe hopped aboard, and the greater demon threw her sword idly to the side, where it dematerialized, then casually walked over to the captain of the vessel and hugged her.
Dark Saint, if I may ask... Oh, right.
Zoe patted the wolf-eared woman on the shoulder.
Introductions.
As she talked, the boat began to drift backwards through the rift.
Cypher, this is Styx, the Watcher of the River of Souls. Styx, this is Cypher, a veteran mercenary from Blackrock, and that...
She pointed at the shield in Cypher's arm.
...is Aegis. Aegis and I don't get along.
Styx inclined her head slightly towards Cypher.
Nice to meet you, human.
She frowned and looked at Zoe.
The shield is alive? No, but it's angelic.
Styx let out a soft...
Oh.
Then nodded her head and changed the subject.
We're just returning to Blackrock, right? Yep.
Zoe sat down against the sailor's mast and crossed her legs. By this point, the ferry had fully re-entered Hell. Cypher's grey eyes widened in surprise. She'd expected Hell to be more fire and brimstone, but instead there was grass. Greyish and dying like Silverland, but it was still there. Sloping hills, meadows with beautiful flowers, sickly yellow trees with almost slime-coated dark green leaves. The river was the part that caught her eye the most, though. The water was grey and transparent, but murky silhouettes drifted idly beneath. She couldn't stop herself from letting out a soft...
Whoa.
Styx stifled a giggle.
This is only the first of the 9 realms, 9 regions, The Blight Glades. Not all the regions are as beautiful, but my river flows through them all. Think I'll reach the 6?
Styx stuffed her hands into her trenchcoat pockets and shook her head.
Nah. You want to go to Blackrock, not Hell's Gate. As soon as the runes recharge, another rift will open.
Cypher looked around a bit more, then leaned against... Cypher looked around a bit more, then leaned against the mast and crossed her arms.
What's in the 6th region exactly?
Zoe grinned.
Hell's Gate, capital of the Old Kingdom. Beautiful castle hanging off the edge of a cliff overlooking magma plains. Not to mention, it's almost directly underneath Lunaris Solaris.
Zoe's grin faded a bit.
No one stepped foot inside Darkstone Castle since the Queen disappeared, though. The demons of Hell's Gate just kinda ignore it.
Cypher decided to change the subject for Zoe's benefit.
What's Lunaris Solaris?
Styx pointed skyward with a smile.
In case you haven't noticed, Hell isn't like the mortal world. We may as well be underground. So in place of a sun and moon, we have Lunaris Solaris.
Cypher looked up, noticing with slight yet contained wonder at the gigantic warpstone orb embedded in the cavernous ceiling.
Lunaris Solaris shines brightly during the daylight hours, we share the mortal world, and then blackens when night falls. Even has moon stages.
Zoe stood up, looking up at it with Cypher. At that moment, a rift opened in front of them, and the boat slipped through, bumping into the dockyard of the Isle of Pillars.
Ah, we're here. Thanks, Styx.
Cypher and Zoe hopped onto the wooden deck.
Boss, wait a sec.
Zoe turned, reacting just in time to catch a golden coin that she quickly pocketed. Styx smirked.
Have an extra.
Zoe smiled back.
I will resist purchasing ale with it.
Cypher stood idly for a moment before bowing slightly.
Thank you for rescuing us, Miss Styx. I should report to Asbestos.
She promptly turned and began walking towards the ruins of Blackrock's spire. Zoe watched the mercenary for a few moments, then turned back to Styx.
As you said, thanks. Like the all-powerful Saint of Blood needs rescuing.
They shared a laugh before Zoe backed away, gripping a necklace she wore under her cloak.
I'll see you at the cabin tonight. Stay safe, Z.
Zoe snorted.
Like anyone could hurt me. Am I not allowed to worry?
Zoe playfully kicked the ferry, causing it to rock slightly.
Shush you. I'll see you at the cabin. I look forward to it.
The ferry began to slip back through its rift while Zoe walked towards Blackrock, and all fell silent, except for the chirping of birds and the gentle lapping of waves against the island.
It does not feel like an hour has passed, but an hour has almost passed.
Dear Lord, you're right.
Where does the time go? What do you think of the story so far, Rex?
I think it was incredibly well written. This is quite interesting, really. I mean, I'd had a chance to skim over it, but
Skim is never the same as actually processing the content.
right, and especially having at least having one or two people to act out different parts. This is no, this is good. This is really good.
It's a lot of fun, too.
Yeah. All right. Want to take the Codex of Knowledge there?
Yeah. Also, fun fact, I keep forgetting what my map looked like when I was writing this. So somehow it just worked out that I remembered where everything is supposed to be.
Caught a lucky break.
Codex of Knowledge, Midheim. Once known as the First Kingdom, the lineage of Midheim controlled the entire continent known as the Realm, from the tips of what would become Sigmar and Garany to the majestic island unmarred by necromancy, Silverland. Humanity dwelled in this kingdom, existing peacefully alongside angels. The first sign of what would soon come to pass was when the god of nothing created hell. The spawning of the first demon could be felt across all the realms, and a gigantic rift was cracked open in the northwest. The demonic energy that flowed from that damned portal corrupted part of the continent, creating the frozen, monster-infested wasteland that would become Garany. While Midheim surrendered their control of the land, stubborn lords remained, seeking to reconquer the region. Blame was not cast onto demonkind, and albeit hesitant, eventually demons found themselves living amongst the humans as well. A few short decades after the first demons began to dwell in the mortal realm, warpstone outcroppings began to appear. Their demonic influence combined with the angelic influence of heaven's arcane trees created magic, which humanity took an instant interest in. Despite losing Garany, Midheim thrived. The beginning of the end came with the assassination of King Mordesar of House Balor by an angel, the son of the King of Heaven. While it had eventually come to light he had been under the dominion of the Queen of Hell, it was already too late, and a three-way conflict was sparked off, the Ancient War. It led to the ousting of angels and demons from the mortal world and saw Midheim itself fall into decline. As the war progressed, disillusioned lords began to rebel, securing their holdings in Silverland and Sigmara, whilst Garany watched from its icy hellhole and laughed at the chaos. Near the end of the war, House Barrow gained control of Midheim's significantly weakened throne with the aid of Nox, Dark Saint of Shadow, and Petra, the King of Heaven. Together, a plan was formed to make sure a repeat of the war could not occur. However, King Marst Barrow would not live to see the end of the war. Together with representatives from Heaven and Hell, King Marst chose a neutral island and offered the most beautiful marble and the remains of Midheim to create the Tower of Man, the physical representation of humanity's pact to retain peace between the three realms. Centuries later, due to the schemes of the Queen of Hell, angered to have been overthrown, Thomas Barrow would kill his father King Arid and his elder brother Urza, taking the throne for himself. Listening to the sweet whispers of the fallen queen, his first act would be the sacking of Blackrock Spire, the pillar representing Hell's part of the Pact of Peace. This foul act would brand Midheim as a pact-breaker kingdom, garnering hatred from both its own people and the surrounding kingdoms. Yet again, through the machinations of the Queen of Hell, war was on the horizon, only stopped by the sudden appearance of the artifacts, in a desperate hunt by all to gather them for their power.
Chapter 3. A New Task. Zoe would never get used to just walking into Blackrock, but teleporting straight into the common room usually led to too much excitement, especially for those trying to relax quietly or sleep down the dorm halls. She idly walked over to a soft chair and sat down, putting one leg over the armrest and holding out her hand. As her fingers clasped around nothing, a goblet manifested in her grip and filled with red liquid. Today it was wine, but sometimes she did like to drink blood. Zoe took a sip and looked round the common room. It was interesting to her how Asbestos ran the guild. The mercenaries were so diverse. Gadonites laughed and cheered over their drinking games and telling war stories or honoring those that had perished and passed on to their beloved realm of eternity. Stigmatites prayed for the lost souls to find peace or read random scriptures they brought to the guild from their homeland. Sylvans sat round practicing minor rituals or reading the necromantic text. Midheimites chatted idly, played small games such as chess, or just drank their sorrows away. So many different backgrounds and beliefs. Zoe sighed. She could never understand how mortals could make up these false ideals and hold so strongly to them. The Dark Saint took another sip of wine. She startled slightly, feeling a metal grip on her shoulder, and looked up into the soft smile of Zara, a blonde Midhamite woman with an artifact stuck to her left arm. The poor woman despised the dark metal gauntlet, and her shoulder bore the wounds of many attempts to detach it.
The Guildmaster wants to see you.
Zoe nodded as Zara took a step back.
Of course he does.
Zoe finished her wine and let the goblet dissipate. Then, with a small red flash, vanished. She manifested inside of Asbestos' quarters and glanced around for a moment. Cypher stood by the closed door, arms clasped behind her back, whilst the armored form of the Guildmaster was behind his desk, looking over the Aegis. He glanced up for a moment. "Ah, demon, I thank you for your promptness. If you'll humor me, I want you to hold this." Zoe raised an eyebrow, confused, as Asbestos turned to face her and held out the shield.
You know if I touch that it'll burn me, right? It's angelic.
He shrugged his armored soldier. He shrugged his armored shoulder. "Aye, I've heard the stories. I've seen the proof, lass. However, surely the straps aren't angelic too, eh?"
You said shoulder the first time. What did your brain hear?
I don't know.
Fuck, who's in the room? Cypher? Guildmaster, maybe...
He held up a finger. "If my theory is wrong, what's the worst that could happen?" Zoe hesitated, then reached out and gripped the shield by its straps. Almost immediately, she could feel her palm beginning to burn, but she would not give Asbestos the satisfaction of her pain. She clenched her teeth, her red eyes glaring into the dark visor of Asbestos' helmet. After a few moments, they could all hear Zoe's hands sizzling and see dark smoke curling away.
Sorry to say, but it seems your theory is wrong.
She let go, and the Aegis fell to the floor with a loud clang.
What next, to try having Calico hold it too?
Asbestos bent down to pick up the shield, then walked over to a bookshelf in the corner of the room, seeming to look for a specific term. "Nay, I've already tested her. Fallen cannot touch angelic artifacts either. At least she can't." Zoe exhaled heavily through her nose and was about to say something when the door swung open and a man dressed for total concealment stormed in, slamming a piece of paper down on Asbestos' desk. Now, how should I approach this one?
Have you ever played Darkest Dungeon?
No. What type of voice are you looking for with this one?
I'm not sure. I got nothing like specific in mind. It's like the last time you'll ever see him anyway.
Oh, all
First
right.
and last time you'll see him.
I'll just wing it. I think we found another artifact, Guildmaster. Asbestos turned and walked over to look at the paper. Where Dismas? Dismas unfolded the paper, showing a hastily drawn map of the northern tip of Silverland. Here. There's a cavern entrance here. My scouts report seeing unnecessary activity there. Some angels and a few of the Gilded King's men. We should send an expedition out right away. Asbestos nodded. Aye, I'll get on it at once. Dismas bowed and departed the room quickly, while the Guildmaster turned to Cypher, who stood up slightly straighter. The cavern would be a dark place. Da Vinci's been working on a tool for such a thing. Seems fate wants to test it out. If you're willing, I want you to lead this expedition as well.
Of course, sir.
She bowed and started to walk out of the room, stopping halfway through as Asbestos began talking to Zoe. I suspect you have been wanting to go as well, Demon. You helped recover the Aegis, and I did make you hold it, so you hear no qualms from me if you decide to follow him. Zoe nodded once, then teleported.
Asbestos is a dick.
Considering the losses while recovering the Aegis, and also the urgency of this trek, Cypher asked for a favor. She would form a small team, and they would use Styx's ferry and its rifts to travel from Blackrock back to Silverland in a far quicker manner. Zoe had agreed, and upon arrival, Styx had seemed excited to be included again. For a team, Cypher only brought Zada, Da Vinci, and Azaria, the Midhamite woman, the silver-haired inventor and sole woman that maintained the guild's more complex weapons, and one of the Sylvan necromancers, respectively. Now, the boats sailed slowly down the River of Souls, waiting for the rift runes to recharge. Cypher and Zada stood at the front of the ferry, the former telling the latter the same thing Zoe and Styx had said before. Is it Azariah or Azaria?
Azariah.
Ah. Azariah stood alone, still against the mast. Da Vinci stood near him, drawing him in her sketchbook, and Zoe sat by Styx's feet, wrapping her burned hand with a bandage. Styx sighed and spoke quietly.
Why do you let him treat you like this?
Zoe let out a pained laugh.
The bastard hates me, Styx. I don't know why or what I did.
She finished bandaging her hand, then laid her head back, looking up at Styx.
You think it's something I can't remember?
Styx hesitated, looking out across the river for a few moments before shrugging.
I mean, maybe. It's the only logical explanation.
Zoe sighed.
I fucking hate not having memories.
Styx decided to change the subject.
Hey, Vince?
The inventor idly wiped some sweat off her forehead, away from the ruined eye patch covering her right eye, and raised an eyebrow.
Tell me about the light beam thingies. Oh boy, what voice did I give Vince? Well, time for me to do a terrible accent, I suppose. Alright, I suppose you're curious.
Da Vinci reached into her backpack and pulled a small handheld cylinder out of it. It flared outward and was covered with glass at one end, with a small red warpstone installed inside. With a button press, it created a focused beam of yellowish light onto the hull of Styx's ferry.
Thanks to the Dark Saint's blood crystals, I was able to build a handful of these. I know you and Azariah can see in the dark, but I have some for you if you want.
Zoe shrugged, but Azariah nodded his head. How shall I approach this voice?
He's a scholar-type necromancer, so...
The gesture is appreciated, Mr. Vinci.
That is spot on what I thought he would sound like. Yo, by the way, Cypher, what's your plan here?
Cypher turned to face them.
Oh, right.
She cleared her throat.
Miss Styx, if possible, I'd like you to wait outside the cavern for us to return. That way we can return directly back to Blackrock once we've found the artifacts. Sure, I can do that. The river's been quiet lately, so I don't exactly need to keep a close eye on it right now.
Cypher nodded.
Thank you, Watcher.
Zoe pointed a finger gun forward, resting her head on her other hand.
Onward into darkness.
As if on cue, a rift opened, and the ferry slipped through it, back into the mortal world. Yet atop a misshapen crag, a shadowy entity watched them go.
Codex of Knowledge, Garany. Garany was once a simple province, grassy and lush, sloping meadows and gentle coastlines, under the dominion of the Crown of Midheim. After the birth of the first demon, a rift opened somewhere deep within Garany, lowering the temperature greatly and mutating many of the animals that dwelt there. Garany became a frozen wasteland, and was the first to rebel against Midheim before the ancient war even began, as stubborn lords refused to retreat from the unnatural and freakish occurrences of the land. The dark influence on the land slowly began to change those that dwelled there, and while the rest of the realm fought the ancient war, Garany fought against itself, struggling to maintain control of a hostile land. By the time the Pact of Peace was finally created and the new human kingdoms of Silverland and Sigmar set up new contacts, those that dwelled in Garany had evolved. Tall and stubborn savages, yet still just as intelligent as any scholar from Midheim. Due to a lack of resources other than whatever could be hunted across the frozen wastes, Garany's denizens split themselves into clans and went upon great raids against the neighboring kingdoms to get the resources required for their survival. And eventually, those raids became a sport when resources weren't required. It happened to be that during one of these daring raids, the Garanites encountered the demon that they would begin to worship as a god. The slaughter the clans reveled in attracted the attention of the Dark Saint of Blood, and she bestowed a dark boon of immortality upon Olaf Bjornsson, who would go on to unite the clans together and be crowned the Everking. From that point onward, the Northmen continued their slaughter and pillaging, yet with a new purpose: to spill blood in the name of the Blood Saint. While many were blessed by the greater demon and made more formed pacts with her, none could be considered to be her favorite except for one man, Kos the Fell-Handed. A single year before the appearance of the first artifact, a particularly brazen Northman led a gigantic raid sanctioned by the Everking into the Holy Kingdom of Sigmara. The raid threatened to destabilize the entire region, and so the angels themselves became involved. The warriors of Sigmara managed to drive the raiders back into the sea. All except one. A single, heavily armored Northman named Kos continued forward. Although he was mortal, his devotion to his people and his dark god spurred him forward. Even as blow after blow pierced his armor and body, even as his great shield was broken in half and his axe hand tired, he fought onward. Kos had not put together the great raid for fame, glory, resources, or entertainment. He had put it together in the name of the Blood Saint, and his single goal was to build a throne of bloody skulls for the Dark Saint of Blood. When finally an angel managed to fell him, he did not call out for mercy or aid. He stared skyward, broken and bleeding, and asked, "Did I serve you well, blooded one?" Kos was swept away by the Dark Saint and returned to Garany, healed and granted immortality, and gifted a runic axe forged with the blood of his pact with the saint. His kill count for that raid numbered into the thousands, and a good many of those were angels. Many had come to fear and respect Kos the Fell-Handed, champion of the North, and all the kingdoms knew. If Kos led the raid, the kill counts would be astronomical.
Chapter 4. The Hunt for the Queen's Goblet. Styx's ferry exited the rift back into the mortal world and bumped idly against Silverland's coastline. The wooden hull creaked softly as everyone jumped off and pulled it onto the beach slightly. Ahead of them was a sheer cliff with a dark gaping maw at its base, the entrance to the cavern Dismas had informed them of. Cypher gripped a crossbow and one of the light emitters Da Vinci had built and walked forward slightly.
Dismas said that angels and midnights had beaten us here, but I see no signs of either. No boats, no discarded feathers.
Azariah walked forward, the warpstone crystal embedded into the center of his visorless helmet, glowing softly, and the 4 huge bone fingers sticking out of the back of his robes, swaying slightly. I sense the dead. Zoe sighed.
No shit, Az. We're in Silverland. The entire island is dead.
No, Dark Saint. Fresh dead. Da Vinci shrugged and passed out her light emitters before pulling a bronze handle from her backpack and holding it idly.
Standing out here won't find us the artifact any faster. Let's get going.
One of the emitters alone lit up the cave entrance brightly. Zada and Da Vinci started to walk ahead, followed by Azariah and Cypher. Zoe looked back for a moment.
You sure you'll be alright out here, Sticks?
The Watcher smiled softly.
Of course. If anyone shows up, I'll just open a rift directly underneath the boat and return to hell.
She gave an idle wave before climbing back aboard.
Good luck, Zoe.
The Dark Saint grinned.
I make my own luck.
She turned and quickly caught up with the others. The cavern seemed to lead straight down at first with a soft incline. As the minutes dragged on, Zoe began to zone out. She thought about how Dismas said both angels and Midhamites had been here, yet there wasn't a single trace of them. An uneasy feeling began to strike her as she thought of a couple of possibilities.
Hold.
She was snapped out of her thoughts by Cypher. The cavern deviated from its gentle descent with an abrupt 90-degree turn. A faint green glow was being casted on the wall by whatever was around the corner. Zoe and Da Vinci shared a look and spoke at the same time.
A warpstone.
Cypher looked back at the rest of the expedition.
Is warpstone an issue?
Zoe shrugged.
By the looks of the glow, it's green. The wicked variety. You mortals should be fine.
Zada shuddered, gripping the artifact that had plagued her for years.
Casually trying to remember how I did my Russian accent like 10 minutes ago. Should be.
On the top of the hand was a closed eye that the Dark Saint knew was made from warpstone. Yet the eye had never opened, so she was unsure of its color or affinity. Azariah also seemed concerned, taking a few steps backwards.
Ugh. Zara has an excuse, her armor act. What about you, Az?
The Liber Mortis, not to mention every scholar of the School of Death, cautions against proximity to warpstone. Da
Yes,
Vinci.
me, Azariah. Most of my creations use warpstone. I forgot that was in the middle.
Da Vinci raised an eyebrow. The necromancer cleared his throat. I should be more specific. Unreasonable quantities, such as an underground deposit like this surely is. Gods only know how much warpstone's around that bend. Cypher thought for a few moments, then exhaled quietly.
We'll do this then.
She shined her light at Zada and Azariah in turn.
Return to the surface and cover the entrance with sticks. If anyone shows up, send a bone messenger. The Dark Saint, Da Vinci, and I will continue onward. I don't fear the warpstone.
You are also not a magic user, Cypher. Azariah gave a slight bow before turning and walking back the way they'd come. Zada smiled apologetically.
I'm sorry we failed you, Cypher. Follow my orders and you won't be considered failures, Zara.
The blonde merc nodded and quickly followed Azariah back out.
Well, down to the three of us. Lay it on.
As the trio rounded the corner, 3 pairs of eyes widened. The passage opened up immensely, and green glowing crystals of various sizes grew out of almost every surface, wall to ceiling. A stone bridge led across a chasm to a dark cave on the other side. Peering over the side, there was enough warpstone to light up the chasm for quite a ways down, and many more stone bridges crisscrossed, yet the bottom could not be seen.
I knew warpstone could warp the land around it, but this is ridiculous.
Da Vinci pressed the button on her handle, and many blades deployed outward in intervals, forming a clockwork axe.
We got to find an artifact in this.
Cypher held a crossbow bolt out towards Zoe.
Give me a light.
A simple snap of the demon's fingers created a spurt of hellfire, lighting the bolt's tip. Cypher loaded it and fired it down. The bolt vanished quickly, and there was no echo to denote it had found a bottom.
We may need to split up. Saint, if you're willing.
Zoe waved her hand dismissively, her sword manifesting in her right hand.
Yeah, I can teleport, you can't. I'll head down, you two follow the bridge.
Cypher and Da Vinci nodded and turned to walk away, but Zoe quickly grabbed the inventor's shoulder.
Vince, I've got a bad feeling about this. You're good with time. Once you hit 20 minutes, head back up. If I haven't found it by then, I doubt we ever will. Understood?
Zoe watched the inventor follow Cypher across the stone bridge, then looked down and took a deep breath, teleporting downward several bridges before shining her light emitter around. While she could see in the dark perfectly fine, if her instincts were right, she felt safer with the artificial light. The bridge, lit faintly by the surrounding warpstone, was empty. Zoe stepped off the edge, teleporting down a few more and glanced around, finding a few dead Midhamites, and an angel ran through with a sword.
Not clear enough a kill to be angelic work.
Zoe rubbed her chin.
Only a demon is this messy. I'm already down here, so who could it be?
She could almost feel the darkness around her increasing, but she continued to play her little game anyway, teleporting down a few more bridges.
Can't be Demos, the bridges are still intact. Not Ignis, no flames, not Lilith.
She teleported down a few more bridges. As she went deeper and the stone bridges continued, the amount of warpstone growing from the walls began to decrease. She found another angel, dead, hands burned black but gripped tightly around a skull goblet.
Aha! Pay never figured out who was down here.
She shined her light emitter up slightly while bending down to grab the goblet, then noticed a large armored skeletal warrior facing away from her and wielding a giant mace. Enrique, hello, welcome in, welcome in. Oh, and Zoe, I thank you for the follow just now. At the same time, as the skeleton began to turn around, the darkness began to feel suffocating.
My brain just went, ah yes, Enrique the skeleton.
Gosh. Want me to take this one?
This is gonna be Nox. I guess it's time for a comedy voice. I'll do this one.
Okay.
Ah! Bloodstained!
The voice did not belong to the warrior, but seemed to emanate from the shadows around her.
Hey, Nox. I was beginning to think you may have sent a Winter Erebus down here, but I guess I was wrong.
She did a finger gun towards the skeleton.
Hey, Mortis. Nox feeding you well? Oh, wait.
An unearthly growl emanated from the skeleton as its eye sockets lit up with blue flames, and it began to march forward.
You have quite the penchant for angering people, Blood Saint.
Is that your Skeletor impersonation?
Yes, yes, it is.
I knew it! I knew it! Yes, you're a skeleton now, Enrique. Zoe shrugged.
My chat just said, of course Nox is fucking Skeletor. Perhaps. Anyway, bye!
She quickly grabbed the goblet and teleported downward farther, but as her body manifested on a stone bridge, she fell to the ground, her sword and the goblet clattering loudly as they hit the stone. Zoe gripped her head tightly, in immense pain.
Hey, Six, can you tell me why you called me down to the river? Thank you for the follow, Enrique B97. Welcome to Club Package where the chaos and bloodshed ensues. I decided to bring your skeletal bulk over here to see what's happening. I have a gift for you. I had Rise forge it from yesterday. Daring today, aren't we? Wait, a necklace. Stain of blood, huh? Do you not like it? I love it, Styx. I was just wondering, why not?
The memory subsided and Zoe punched the bridge beneath her.
Fuck!
She was sure that whatever she had been about to say in that memory would have explained who she was before. She sighed, and then stood up, grabbing her sword and the goblet, slipping the latter safely into her cloak. She glanced upward as bits of rubble fell downward, and her eyes widened as Mortis's large form was hurtling towards her. Zoe teleported down several bridges once again and watched as Mortis smashed through several bridges before missing the one that she was standing on. She laughed and peered over the side.
Fat ass!
A moment later, she felt a bony hand wrapped around her ankle.
Fuck.
The bridge shattered, and she found herself plummeting downward with Mortis.
Get off my bridge!
Fine, then.
If you want to fall thousands of feet to our deaths, fine. I'll send your soul to the river before you hit the bottom, you piece of shit.
You're picturing Skeletor, and I actually was just watching a scene the other day from the anime Princess Connectory Dive of there's this skeleton that's possessed by the father of one of the characters, and he's just an absolute Lothario. Supposed to tell people their fortunes and whatnot, and it just I love the line that I think I've got it saved somewhere. But let's see, where is it? Oh, here it is. I don't even know if you'll be able to hear this or not, but chat, you'll be able to. You might be able to hear this. How can I do this without stopping the music? Oh, never mind. Anyways, he's just like, hey, little lady, you want some tea?
Wow.
It's just really loud and obnoxious in Japanese, like, hi, Jojo-chan, ocha no shinai?
Thank you for stretching Hydro, Cassie.
I love the way that was delivered. That was just brilliant.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I am fine, thank you.
Alright, here we go. Chapter 5. A Falling Memory. Despite the fact she was falling who knew how far into a bottomless pit altered by warpstone with an angry skeleton falling next to her, Zoe had to admit this battle was entertaining. She swung Hellbringer, her jagged blade laughing even as Mortis managed to maneuver his heavy mace against the air to parry the blows. Zoe briefly noted that they had somehow not smashed through any more bridges, only to notice they'd passed all of them long ago, and now even the warpstone seemed hesitant to grow this far downward. She heard Nox's voice, almost in her ear from the shadows.
This will be unfortunate for you, I think, Blood Saint.
Zoe grinned, thrusting forward and watching sparks fly as his sword collided with Mortis's mace.
You always talk too much, Nox. You forget who you're messing with here.
Zoe felt excited and happy. She didn't think a falling battle like this could be so much fun, and she laughed loudly.
I was spawned from the blood font of Hell's Gate. I'm the strongest blood aspect demon in Hell, and I'd hope you haven't forgotten, Noxie, that blood is stronger than shadow.
She struck with renewed fervor, managing to sever one of Mortis's arms.
Come on, Nox, show yourself. I'll send both your souls to the river before you hit the bottom.
Zoe's strikes came faster and harder, and eventually Mortis could no longer defend himself. A lucky strike shattered the handle of his mace, and Zoe fought against the air to deliver a killing blow. Suddenly, though, her ears began to ring and her stomach felt weightless.
Oh, fuck.
Flashback. The Saint of Blood stood beneath the angel pillar, staring up at its shattered tip. After Sigmata had discovered the first artifact, someone had tipped off the Gedonites that one was embedded into the angelic pillar. Zoe sat down against the pillar and manifested Hellbringer, idly dragging its blade along her bruised wrist.
No one's around to make a pact with. Not trying to kill yourself in Minecraft, I hope.
Black wings landed a fallen angel near her. Zoe glanced up at a silver, blonde-haired angel, a black, cracked halo floating above her head.
What do you want, Alex?
The angel frowned.
I told you not...
Zoe interrupted with a smirk.
Yeah, I'll call you Calico.
Zoe stood up and brushed herself off, leaning on her sword.
You didn't answer my question, though.
Calico's wings folded against her back, and she fidgeted her thumbs a bit.
I was... curious, is all. You signed the contract with me as we'd promised.
Zoe walked over and patted Calico on the shoulder.
Of course I did. Couldn't care less what happens to humans, but you seemed like you were desperate.
Calico nodded her head, looking away for a moment.
Have you, remembered anything?
Zoe shook her head with a sigh.
Not a damn thing.
She crossed her arms.
I don't think it's fair that so few people trust me when I can't even remember what I did to deserve such distrust. Asbestos being himself again.
Zoe leaned against the pillow with a mock laugh.
Ha! How can you tell? For what it's worth, I trust you. Besides, I understand what it's like. I'm a fallen in service to heaven after all.
Calico glanced around a bit, then looked away.
How's the leg?
Zoe raised an eyebrow and smirked slightly before bending down to hold up her cloak and roll up her pant leg slightly. A large burn, partially healed, wrapped all the way around the bottom part of the leg.
I'm a demon, Calico. Don't take a little more than a bit of abuse from a dumb mortal to truly hurt me.
Calico nodded her head slightly, then suddenly wrapped her arms round the greater demon. Zoe fidgeted violently for a few seconds, causing Calico to pull away.
Whoa, what are you doing?
Calico hesitated.
Is it wrong to hug my friend?
Grey eyes stared into red ones. Finally, Zoe took a step forward and wrapped her arms around Calico.
Petra being himself too, huh?
The angel and demon stood there in each other's arms for a few moments.
You don't even know the half of it, Zoe.
Zoe sat up gasping and looked around rapidly. Her dark sight showed she'd actually hit the bottom. Looking up, though, she couldn't even see a trace of the warp stone. She was extremely far underground.
Damn.
She slowly got to her feet and looked round. The darkness wasn't suffocating, and Mortis was nowhere to be seen. The goblet was still in her cloak. She sighed in relief, then fell to her knees in intense pain, and noticed a wound leaking shadow in her stomach.
Oh, of course he fucking stabbed me while I was unconscious.
It was visibly regenerating, but she couldn't teleport reliably until she had healed.
Ugh.
Zoe crawled over to the side of the pit and sat against the wall.
Hope Vincent Cypher got out alright at least.
Reality ripped asunder, and a blue rift manifested near her, a familiar fallen stepping out of it.
Need a hand, Z?
The demon smirked and got to her feet.
Thank you for the follow, the only giant banana. Welcome to Code Pack to the Chaos Bloodshed ensues. Since when do you use rifts?
Calico sheepishly looked up.
When I realized there are places I can't get to with my wings. It took me a few tries to get the words right to find you. I'm touched you tried so hard. We heading back to the guild then?
Calico shook her head.
You've been down here for a few days. I'm taking you to Styx's cabin first, and I can deliver the artifact from there.
Zoe sighed.
I like this goblet, seeing as I fell all the fucking way here to get it.
Calico smiled softly.
Let Asbestos thinks you secured it, and I'll bring it to you in Styx later.
Zoe hesitated.
Thanks, Alex. Don't mention it. Hello, Giant. Welcome to chat. You and Cassie can find out who was the biggest banana. Codex of Knowledge, the Fallen. All angels swear loyalty to Petra Hexawing, King of Heaven, and a self-proclaimed first angel, but there was another before him. A mere decade before the creation of demons and the realm of hell, the true first became disillusioned in the faith of the Hexawing. Seeking to create her own kingdom, the angel managed to create a following and rose in rebellion against the established beliefs and laws of Petra. The war was kept hidden from both mortals and the God of Nothing, yet became a brutal stalemate. The turning point of the so-called Hidden War came with the introduction of Demonkind. As the tides seemed to start turning against the rebellion, the first went to the newly established Kingdom of Hell and asked the Queen of Hell for power. Bathing in River Demonica, the primordial river of Hell, the first angel also became the first fallen, and led many angels into darkness. This attempt to gain power would also forever weaken the angelic race as a whole, making them easier to corrupt. Desperate to retain hold of heaven, Petra formed alliances behind the Queen of Hell's back, with notable demons, and with their aid, the rebels were tracked down and destroyed. The end of the Hidden War led to the Queen of Hell and the King of Heaven creating the 9 Dark Saints and the 9 High Saints, to help watch over their kingdoms and preventing the chaos that shook both heaven and hell from repeating itself. The first angel, Queen of the Fallen, was never found, but her actions and the results of the Hidden War embedded a distrust of fallen angels into humanity and angelic kind. This unfair hatred led many newer Fallen to flee to this dark realm where the Queen of Hell chose to fulfill a promise, granting them lands and protecting them in their havens. While the Fallen are numerous, dwelling in havens of both heaven and hell, there are a few notable ones, the first being Alexandria Calico, High Saint of Change. Despite being a Fallen, she was selected personally by Petra to be a diplomat between heaven and hell. As all Fallen gain a demonic aspect upon their transformation, Calico is unique in that her aspect is unknown to all, including herself. The second most infamous Fallen is the Dark Saint of Corruption, Evelyn. Once the highest saint of prosperity, an unfortunate incident with Warpstone during the Ancient War led to her fall, the deaths of many brave angels. Evelyn is the only Fallen to have corruption itself as her demonic aspect. Evelyn also suffers from addiction to Warpstone, yet her body boasts a resistance to Warp Rot far more powerful than any resistance ever recorded. While demons can become angels, angels can become demons, the events of the Hidden War made it far easier for the latter. The demonic influence of Warpstone whispers sweet promises to weak-willed angels, and ever since the end of the Hidden War, some angels are simply born fallen.
Chapter 6. The Dark Saint of Corruption. Untidy red hair, bright yellow eyes, a lithe and beautiful figure. At first glance, one wouldn't take Evelyn for a Fallen, but on closer inspection, she was far more than a simple Fallen. Her white wings were visibly rotting and decayed, and her golden halo corroded and filled with holes, like Midamite cheese. She was, after all, the Dark Saint of Corruption. A lovely title, fitting for one such as her. Others thought so anyway. What others thought of her didn't matter currently, though. Right now, Evelyn was on a mission. Lord Nox, the Dark Saint of Shadows, had tasked her with locating some stupid artifact that he claimed was somewhere out here in Sigmarite countryside. So here she was, flying around by herself looking for it. As far as she had been told, it was a book. Evelyn sighed and began to hover along the coastline, reaching into a small pouch she wore on her belt. After rooting around for a bit, she only produced a purple warpstone, sharpened into a spear tip. Evelyn sighed.
Seems I've crushed them all again.
With a flap of her rotten wings, Evelyn began flying down the coastline.
The book can wait, I need a fix.
She kept her eyes peeled for any rocky alcoves on the cliff sides or shaded areas along the beaches. A few tedious hours of flight later, and with the sun setting in the distance, casting the land in a soft orange glow, Evelyn finally found what she sought. Most addicts, even herself included, could always tell when there was a source of warpstone near them. With a grin, she propelled herself downward and landed on the beach, finding a small patch of green warpstone nestled under a tiny cliff. She crouched down and grabbed the purple warpstone from her pouch again.
Wakey wakey pox.
Organic tendrils began to grow out of the smoothly curved bottom of the crystal, cradling it while growing downward in tight, strong twirls. Eventually, the Dark Saint held a full-length spear made entirely out of corruption, with the warpstone as its tip. With careful extraction, she broke away a few small crystals from the ground and gathered them into her pouch before holding one in her bare hand.
Would have loved the yellow. Oh well, this'll do.
Utilizing her enhanced strength, Evelyn simply crushed the crystal, a few fragments falling to the ground, but the rest absorbing into her body, even through the fabric of her clothes. The Fallen felt instant euphoria and a mild cloudiness in her mind.
Woo, that's the stuff.
She started to reach for another one until she had a rock slip behind her. She gripped Pox tightly.
Shouldn't sneak up on a girl like that.
She turned to face the individual that had managed to get so close without her awareness, raising an eyebrow in surprise that it was a mere human, a farmer by the looks of it. He seemed afraid but curious. You're an angel, right?
Yeah. Stand still.
She thrusted Pox forward, and the man yelled out, hands outstretched, "Oh, wait!" Pox's purple tip was so close, practically laying against the man's shirt. Evelyn stared at him for a moment, curious what he had to say. You like the crystals, right? My son, he's an apostate from the church. Evelyn sighed and pulled back.
Get to the point, old man.
You said you wanted yellow, right? He has some. Just don't kill me and you can Take it, all of it! While Nox's orders were to kill any humans that found her looking for artifacts, she couldn't resist.
Fine. Take me to your son.
The farmer lived surprisingly close to the... Try that again.
The farm lives surprisingly close to the coastline.
The farmer lives surprisingly close to the coastline. A barn and large house sat defiantly in the middle of an empty field, yet there were no crops around, nor animals. The farmer hesitantly walked into his home, and Evelyn folded up her wings, following behind him. It was about what she expected from a mortal. Simple candles to light the place, a few feather-stuffed seats, a sturdy wooden table in the kitchen with a book on it, and some... Evelyn did a double-take. There was a pile of yellow warpstone on the table in the kitchen. She shoved past the farmer and began stuffing crystals into her bag.
Congratulations, mortal. You successfully bought your life. Oh my god, is this orange?
The farmer stood on the other side of the table nervously and nodded, "Aye." Evelyn hesitated before slipping it into her pouch. As much as she wanted to crush it, she refused to do so around a human. "Oh, Miss Angel, before you go..." A shaky hand pointed out the book. "That tome there. I cannot read it. Seems like your language, I think." Evelyn looked at it curiously before opening up to the first page. She raised an eyebrow. First off, this wasn't her language. Her demonic wasn't all that great, but she figured she could read this.
Baka Safino Mikla?
A rift tore the air apart behind her, and she quickly turned, bearing pox at it.
What the...
"Yeah!"
What?
The farmer suddenly shoved the book into her grip, then with a sinister smile knocked her through the rift.
You son of a
The rift closed.
Itch!
Evelyn blinked and looked around her slowly. She was surrounded by bookshelves full to the brim with text both old and new, forbidden and known. Realization hit her like a ton of bricks, and she looked down at the book in her hands.
This is a codex. Codex of Knowledge. Angels. The first of the two non-human races that coexist besides humans. Angels are in essence just magical winged humans. They are created to mimic humans as closely as possible and so procreate the same way. From birth, angels are gifted their very own freshly forged halos, created from the true ores, only attainable from the realm of heaven. Halos are almost entirely indestructible and forever bound to the angel they are given to. The wings and halo of an angel are their pride and joy, and can in some cases give a glimpse into the state of their health. When stressed or beset by illness, the wings may wither, and the halo may not float as high above the head. While angelic feathers reconstitute almost instantly, angels cannot regenerate as wholly as demons, and thus, wings that are entirely severed or destroyed will never regenerate. Halos cannot be manipulated by any other than the original angel the halo was forged for. They can be removed by the angel for periods of time to allow more convenient situations, such as angels removing their halo to sleep. Halos serve an important role, as the majority of the abilities that separate angels from humans come from the magic of their halos. While frowned upon by the angelic forge masters, some modify their halos. The two most notable examples being Archangel Zera, who welded a thin blade around his halo and would throw it with his enhanced strength, in fact creating a bladed boomerang, as the halo's bond to him would cause it to fly back towards him at high speed. The second most notable modification is Kha'Zix, High Saint of Life. Kha'Zix's halo was melted down and reformed into the helmet he wears at nearly all times. Halos are also a notable way to discover Fallen. While wings can be disguised or not affected enough to truly reveal a Fallen, the halos of Fallen tend to crack, corrode, or break into pieces. Despite the damages, the halo continues to float as it was never broken in the first place. Unlike the demon kind, angels lack aspects that truly define them, but some angels are born with an extra pair of wings. Petra, the High King of Heaven, is the first and only angel to have been born with 3 pairs of wings, and has ruled heaven since the first inception of the realm. It should not be overlooked that despite the stereotypes humans give onto them, angels are just as capable of committing evil as demons are capable of committing good.
Chapter 7. Corrupted Souls. Ending up here was bad enough. Ending up here but one of the infamous 10 codices was worse. Evelyn gripped the dark book tightly, Pox ready in her other hand, as she took the only path the bookshelves allowed. As she walked, she started to hear a smug voice emanating from the shelves around her. She did her best to ignore it as she walked.
You want to be Cagliostra?
Sure. Smug. Okay.
Smug, know-it-all, asshole.
Thank you, Corrupted One, for returning my codex to me. Evelyn said nothing. Oh, I do apologize for the shock, Corrupted One. I do hope my disciple wasn't too rough. You know, these books of mine were scattered to the winds by my dear cousin. I'm sure you remember her. Even while remaining utterly still, the bookshelves seemed to shift. Evelyn found herself suddenly forced to make a right down the new hallway.
The speaker, right. I take it you two had a falling out or something? Hi, Michael.
There was another abrupt turn, this time to the left. Evelyn glanced behind her, seeing only a bookshelf. She was stuck on whatever route Cagliostro forced her on. She sighed. This place was undoubtedly the hidden librarium, an immense labyrinth of knowledge that belonged to Cagliostro, better known as the Listener. What are you thinking about, Corrupted One? Evelyn shrugged.
Oh, you know, just fond memories of the first time I saw this place, when the Queen brought me here. Tell me something, Cag. How shocking was it for you to realize that there's others that can manipulate these shells and navigate this fucking place?
She heard a chuckle behind her and quickly turned. Pox thrusted forward. Before her stood the hooded and robed form of the Listener, a cracked, ever-smiling mask obscuring his face. No one had ever seen his face, and the shadows of his hood obscured whatever may be beneath. Many in hell wondered if Cagliostro even had a body underneath his robes. You forget your place, slave of the Shadow Lord. I forgive your transgression, though. In fact, I'm willing to make a deal in exchange for the safe return of my codex. Your body is highly resistant to warp rot. You've gone months, even years, without facing any side effects.
Some resistant to warp rot. What of it?
Goose, hello. Evelyn blinked. Cagliostro had vanished. She sucked in some air, then turned and kept walking. Another corner brought her to an opening in a large rectangular room. To her left was a pile of warpstone of various colors, and to her right, a bookshelf embedded into the floor created a makeshift ledge over a swirling portal. Or maybe it was more akin to a pirate ship's plank. Evelyn's eyes were drawn to the black warpstone, scattered amongst the rainbow of crystals in the pile, though. Cagliostro's voice echoed from all sides. Tell me, Corrupted One, have you always dreamed of the potency black warpstone could contain? And yet you feared it. Evelyn shook her head slightly and took a shaky step towards the portal. Now was not the time to indulge herself. She had to get out of here.
Of course I fear it. All demons fear black warpstone. It's dangerous. Anyone that's ever tried to study it has died.
A chuckle bounced around the bookshelves. Perhaps. But what if I said I could harness its power? I could teach you how to consume it. Or perhaps there's another offering that can sway your mind. Evelyn felt compelled to walk over to the mirror. In it, she saw not her fallen self, but who she had once been, the High Saint of Prosperity. In Pox's place was her golden lance, and on her arms were gauntlets forged of true gold. Gauntlets she had treasured and subsequently lost after her fall centuries ago. She hesitated.
This is not gonna ever pop up in any of these chapters, but a fun fact is the gauntlet stuck to Zara's arm is one of Evelyn's 2 gauntlets. It's also corrupted.
Hmm.
Quite a deal for this little book. Does it mean that much to you?
She took a sudden step back, gasping as her reflection began to rapidly succumb to warp rot. Warpstone growing out of her flesh, puncturing organs, shattering bones, slicing open her skin. Blood poured freely as the reflection acted independently, falling to the ground in an excruciatingly painful death. Evelyn quickly looked over her own body, breathing rapidly, and sighed in relief that her own self was still fine. A few decaying feathers fell from her wings, rapidly reconstituted, of course. She cleared her throat.
It's not a spoiler, Goose, if it never pops up in the book. What if I say no to both of your deals and head for that portal over there?
Cagliostro appeared in the mirror, hands clasped behind his back, and chuckled again. I humbly remind you, corrupted one, you are in my domain. There was a threat there. The listener tilted his head to the side slightly. Evelyn frowned.
Tell me why it's so important to you.
Is that the exchange you wish for, hmm?
Whatever, fine.
Very well. Evelyn felt her body suddenly lock up, and she realized the trap she had walked into. Cagliostro walked out of the mirror as if it was an alternate passageway, not a reflective surface, and began to walk in slow circles around the fallen. To put it simply, corrupted one, I need the books so that I may ward the librarium against the end of all things. He let out a fake gasp. You are unaware of the end of all things. Cagliostro petted Evelyn's head and took his codex from her grip. Fear not, little angel. You'll understand one day. I apologize if that was an unsatisfactory response, but I did answer your question. Evelyn's body walked itself over to the portal. Do send my regards to Lord Knox. He walked up beside Evelyn and whispered into her ear, Do pass on a message for me as well. Inform Lord Knox that if he continues to search for my precious books, he will have far more to worry about than the inevitable return of the Queen. Evelyn's eyes widened, and Cagliostro let out a small laugh. Oh, indeed, corrupted one. Your dearest friend still lives. You have even laid eyes upon her form recently. A pity that your warpstone-addled mind is so damaged you cannot remember what she looks like. Oh well, this is farewell, corrupted one. He gave the fallen a slight nudge, and she fell down through the portal.
So what do you think of Cagliostro so far?
Oh, I'm having fun with this one. I'm sort of... In my mind, he's like this cross between the original portrayal of, like, the Master, the Celestial Toymaker from Doctor Who, combined with Q from Star Trek.
He's like the medieval version of a antagonist across all my stories called Schrodinger.
Schrodinger. Interesting. Woke up, so I'm here. Hello, Bun. Hello, hello.
Your voice fits so well with the way I wrote Cagliostro.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad I got it right. Styx idly gripped the steering oar of her ferry as it sailed idly down the River of Souls. She received a message that Zoe had been found and Calico had sent her to the cabin. Styx was both relieved and yet also... She sighed. She already knew Zoe would brush off the incident. The Watcher sighed again and looked around at the numerous black oaks and blights of the eternal forest. Styx shuddered slightly. She didn't particularly like this region of hell, but as the Watcher of the River, it was her job to sail its entire length at least once every so often. Styx reached into the folds of a trench coat and pulled out a golden gun, taking on the appearance of a double-barreled flintlock. It ticked idly like a clock. A gift from Da Vinci upon the inventor learning that Styx's fallback for defense was the generic punching and kicking of desperation. It also solidified her friendship with the eccentric inventor, and gave Styx someone to talk to whenever Zoe was too busy to be with her, which was painfully often. Styx smiled sadly at the pistol and started to slip it back into her coat. Maybe she should make an unannounced visit to Blackrock, or maybe she could send a messenger to find Evelyn. Styx was snapped out of her thoughts by her ferry beaching itself slightly. She was still in the eternal forest, which meant if she were noticed by any of its vile residents, she would be in trouble. Styx quickly hopped out of the ferry, ran into its front, and started to push.
I do not need this right now. Smile up.
She spoke in demonic to the river itself, and almost immediately a few souls surfaced and began to pull on the back of the ferry.
This is some random asshole.
Oh. Your soul is powerful. Styx stood up straight, a shiver running up her spine. She turned round quickly, aiming her gun, but the speaker was faster and shoved her up against the ferry, one arm against her neck, the other slamming a gun hand against the boat. Styx stared fearfully into the eyes of a crazed old man, silvery strands of hair going almost to his legs, lumps of flesh like tumors covering his face, and a single horn sticking out of his forehead. He cackled.
What do you want?
Your soul. He started to breathe in heavily, and Styx felt a painful pulling sensation in her chest. She felt her lungs deplete of oxygen. Her organs were throbbing. She felt her very being seemed to slowly be taken from her. Yet with the sensation came another stronger sensation. She just needed a second to... A stick snapped in half nearby, and the crazed demon became distracted. His eyes widened as he noticed two red pinpricks staring at him from the darkness of the trees. He turned back to hurry on with his task, but suddenly found Styx's left hand lunging forward and grasping his neck, her hand engulfed in a purple flame, and her grey eyes taking on almost unnoticeable but slight color. She still looked terrified.
My soul is my own. You can't have it.
The male demon let out a soft chuckle. You are the last. The flame grew brighter for a moment before the man fell backwards, lifeless and unmoving. The flame on Styx's hand disappeared, and she stood there, breathing heavily for a moment. She could sense his soul was entirely gone, and she looked down her hand for a moment.
How did I do that?
Your local Arbor fan, thank you for the follow. And thank you for the stretch redeem. A ferry lurched behind her as the souls had managed to finally pull it back into the river, and Styx quickly boarded again, gripping the steering oar shakily and sailing as fast as the ferry could go to escape the region and sail into the next. She briefly wondered why Zoe hadn't come to her rescue. They had a blood pact. Shouldn't Zoe have known she was in danger? Styx sighed and pushed all of it from her mind. Styx didn't manage to sail very far before she saw something in the water and walked to the front of the ferry with a frown.
Who's throwing garbage in my river? Oh my god, it's Evelyn?
Laying face down in the water was an angel, and with decayed wings like that, there was only one person it could be. Evelyn awoke groggily and looked around. She quickly noted the size of the boat she was on and the cavernous ceiling far above, and realized she was on the ferry of the damned. She slowly stood up and faced the back of the boat.
Styx? Hey, sleepyhead.
Styx hesitated for a moment.
I'm taking you to Hell's Gate.
There was an awkward silence for a few moments as Evelyn only nodded and settled herself against the mast.
Ev, why were you face down in the river?
Evelyn looked surprised.
I was?
Evelyn was no stranger to losing random memories. Warpstone had that effect sometimes. but she was pretty sure she would have remembered falling into the river of souls. She hooked her knees, thinking hard.
What's the last thing you remember? I was...
Evelyn squeezed her knees tighter.
Nox sent me to find a book. That's all I remember.
There was another awkward silence.
Are you okay?
Evelyn looked up at Styx with a raised eyebrow.
We're friends, aren't we? Am I not allowed to worry about you?
Evelyn shook her head quickly.
Sorry, yeah, I'm fine, I guess.
Yet again, they went silent until Evelyn stood up.
Styx? Are you okay?
Styx looked down at the deck for a few moments, then forced a smile.
Yeah, I'm great. Styx, you look shaken up.
The Watcher let the smile fade.
I got beached is all. Got attacked by some wild animals.
The ferry bumped into an empty dock at Hell's Gates, Tri-River Port. River Demonica and River Sapphire seemed quite busy today.
Try not to go drown yourself again, okay?
Evelyn smirked slightly.
No promises.
She stepped onto the dock, then turned suddenly.
Hey, next time you're sailing through the Eternal Forest, let me know. I wouldn't mind playing bodyguard. Anything to get me away from Nox.
Styx was surprised for a moment, then nodded.
Yeah, sure. And, hey, you can come to my cabin anytime you want. We could make it a sleepover or something. I'm sure Zoe would be happy to see you again, too. It's been about 2 years just about, hasn't it?
Evelyn nodded slowly.
I'll think about it. Thanks, Styx.
They waved at each other. As Styx's ferry began to drift down the river once more, Evelyn took a green warpstone from her pouch and crushed it. Nox wasn't going to be happy she failed, and even less happy the listener knew the Queen's whereabouts. Better to get her pleasure now, so at least dealing with Nox would be bearable as she came down. Stupid bag of bones was probably wondering where she was. Bastard could wait a few years longer. Try again.
A few hours longer.
Bastard could wait a few hours longer.
Maybe I will visit the cabin, Styx. Codex of Knowledge. Demons. The second of the two non-human races to be created. In some ways, demons are almost like humans, but in other ways, they're so much more unique. Demons are not born in the traditional way, but rather manifest from ancient altars that exist all across Hell. All altars are associated with a certain aspect, and this aspect is passed on to the demon manifested by it. Demons manifest fully grown from these altars except for extremely unique cases. The three most common altars are the Hellflame, a Fire Aspect altar, the Shadow Tower, a Shadow Aspect altar, and the Chilled Spire, a Frost Aspect altar. Most unique of all the altars are the Blood Fonts and the Altar of Red, the former having manifested only a single demon, who would go on to become Queen of Hell, and the latter would come to spawn a few greater demons yet an exceedingly large amount of lessers. Both altars are the Blood Aspect. Although exceedingly rare, 2 irregularities have been known to manifest from altars. The first being for 2 or 3 demons to manifest at once from the same altar. Demons in this case tend to form close bonds, usually seeing themselves as cousins or siblings. The second irregularity is that of a child form. Child demons tend to blend a mixture of a young mindset with that of an adult mindset. Family is not a concept truly understood by demonkind, yet many demons form families regardless and help take care of the young ones. Demons are categorized as greater or lesser, a categorization unaffected by the aspect they are manifested with. Lesser demons are numerous and can be seen more as highly powerful human mages, if not for their heavily varied appearances. Greater demons are exceedingly stronger, and many, but not all, are able to use an ability that a rare amount of lessers have, the demon form. No matter how monstrous a demon may look, they always manifest in a human form. Yet those who have the power to do so may transform at will into a more monstrous form that harnesses the full power of their aspect. No greater demon can hold a candle to the might of the Queen of Hell, yet the lessers cannot be ignored either, most especially among the lessers being the most unique as well. It is not unheard of for demons to manifest without an aspect, although there is a higher chance of a dual or triple manifestation with children than an aspectless demon, such as Rise, demon smith of Hell's Gate, and known as the Architect to many. Despite manifesting from the altar of red, Rise lacks both a demon form and an aspect, and other than her dark hair and red eyes, can easily be mistaken for a human. Yet Rise is far more powerful than her mundane appearance would suggest. While there are many smiths in Hell, only Rise can boast to have created the most powerful magical weapons to ever exist, having forged the Queen's Sword, Misery's End, and even angelic weapons such as Dawn's Grace, Hyacinth Kazac's two-handed axe. Before the Ancient War, Rise oversaw the construction of various demonic settlements in the mortal world, and her skills have inspired many mortals. Rise is the only lesser demon to be recognized as a god, and is the patron deity to Ferris, a kingdom located in the Outlands far north of the realm. Rise's influence caused the kingdom of Ferris to become filled with inventors, artists, sculptors, and many more, all inspired by the demon born with nothing, and rose to become the most successful lesser demon, recognized across all of the realms. Thank you for the stretch and hydrate, Cassie.
Zoe, I think let's do one more chapter and then we'll why don't we wrap up after that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Chapter 8. Disillusionment. Upriver, a small distance from Styx's cabin, close to the reverse waterfall that led into the ninth region, Zoe sat on a blight tree stump, idly tossing rocks into the soul-filled water. After Calico had brought her to the cabin and left with a skull goblet, Zoe had quickly gotten bored waiting on the Watcher's return home and came out here for something to do. She idly looked around. The forest here was sparse, yet the way that some of the trees defiantly grew out of the riverbank itself. Zoe liked this area. She sighed, staring down at her reflection in the water. Something had been nagging at her mind. She had touched many artifacts in the past, and yet that goblet had returned one of her memories to her. That was a definite first. Zoe propped her head on her hand. She was sure, damn near positive, in fact, that Asbestos likely knew something. He seemed somewhat amicable when she went on the expedition to find the goblet. Next time she was at the guild, she would try asking him.
Alright, this is Salem. He's a know-it-all like Cagliostro, but he's less of an asshole.
There is another artifact that would aid your mind, Blood Saint. Zoe frowned. Did her reflection just talk? Forget that. Why was it smiling with sinister intent? Zoe's jagged sword, Hellbringer, manifested in her hand, and she idly stood up with a sigh.
What do you want, Salem?
Her reflection pouted before shifting into a shrouded face, hidden by a tall collar and a hilariously large wizard hat. All that was truly visible were two red pinpricks where eyes would be. Zoe turned round behind her, raising her blade towards the one and only saint of madness, Salem. Although he was a full foot shorter than the fox demon, if height were an indication of power, the three realms would have been doomed.
Wherever you go, bad things happen. What do you want?
I simply wish to aid you, Blood Saint. Zoe raised an eyebrow, confused.
Salem, you serve Nox. Nox collects artifacts to keep him away from mortals.
She pressed a hand to her chest.
I openly assist a mercenary guild to collect them. Why in the nine hells would you tell me the location of one?
Salem chuckled. Simply because I've heard rumors of an interesting effect the Queen's goblet had on you. And the Saint of Blood did not openly react. The revelation that what had returned a memory to her was the missing Queen of Hell's goblet. It raised many questions in her mind. Salem clasped his hands behind his back. You suspect? You have always suspected. There are too many coincidences at play. Zoe hesitated, lowering her sword. There was no way it could be true, but...
Are you saying the artifact you know of will give me more of my memories back?
Salem nodded.
Fine. I'll humor you for a little bit. Tell me.
The Raven Crown is the artifact. Zoe cleared her throat.
The Queen of the Fallen's crown? Salem, how is the crown of a dead fallen going to help me?
She could almost see the smug grin in the shadows under Salem's stupid hat. You and I both know that many around you are aware of who you are, while they may not be willing to tell you. I assure you, you had extensive dealings with the fallen queen. Enough dealings that the significance may just return some of your memories to you. In fact, Blood Saint, your guildmaster is aware of the crown's location as well. Ask him where he has hidden it. Zoe hesitated.
And Nox?
Salem chuckled again. What the Lord of Shadow doesn't know cannot hurt him. Salem seemed to melt into the ground and vanish. Zoe clenched her bandaged hand.
Well, confronting his best is about an artifact. I have more than one excuse to speak to him, at least.
She looked up. Even here in the outer circle, she could see Hell's Gate, a sprawling demonic settlement that sat humbly on the edge of a sheer cliff. She could even see Darkstone Castle, floating off the edge as always. With a sigh, Zoe realized just how long she'd been standing here. She should go see if Styx had returned home. Styx's ferry sat floating idly at its small pier on the river, which meant Styx was likely home. Zoe walked up to the door and turned the handle, the wooden door opening easily.
Zoe!
Styx stumbled to her feet with a goofy grin, a square-shaped bottle in her right hand. She giggled softly.
I was starting to think you weren't going to come see me.
Zoe looked at the bottle for a moment, then Styx's drunken face with a slight smile.
And where did you get that? Oh, this?
Styx hiccuped and let gravity take hold, falling back onto her couch.
I smuggled some in from Essence. She had a few extras, so I took some.
Zoe nodded and sat on the soft chair next to the couch, crossing her legs and leaning back.
I'm happy you're okay.
Zoe sat up slightly.
What?
Styx seemingly struggled to form words for a moment, then took another swig of whiskey before speaking again.
When you were missing for a week, remember?
Zoe grinned.
Like I've told you, Styx. Takes a lot to hurt me.
Styx frowned.
But I was worried sick.
The Watcher seemed to have sobered up quickly out of nowhere.
You were gone for an entire week, Zoe. No one knew where you were. All I could think about was the worst case scenario. I knew you couldn't care less about yourself, but please, try to think about how it affects the rest of us.
Styx hiccuped again. Zoe started to speak, but Styx sat up and added on.
You're the Saint of Blood, born of the Blood Font. I don't want this spiel again.
She sighed for a moment.
I almost died today.
Zoe raised an eyebrow.
You seem fine to me.
Styx froze perfectly still. The fox demon stood up suddenly.
Oh, right. Asbestos. Gotta speak with him before he disappears on business.
Zoe gave Styx a quick hug and a kiss on the forehead.
I'll see you soon.
Zoe teleported with a soft red flash, leaving Styx still stunned.
You seem fine to me? You seem fine to me?
Styx's eyes filled with tears, and she stood up, stomping in a small circle, her fingers wrapped tightly around the neck of her bottle.
Do I need to be bruised and bleeding for you to give a shit, Zoe? Is that what it takes?
The cabin door creaked open.
Hey, Stick.
The bottle shattered against the wall next to it a moment later. Evelyn recoiled and started to close the door again.
I'll come back later.
Styx gasped.
Wait, Ev, don't leave.
She tripped over her table and barely managed to brace herself on the floorboards. The door stopped moving as Styx looked up, reaching out towards it.
Ev, please. I don't want to be alone.
She sniffled, struggling against her emotions to not burst into tears. The door slowly creaked open, and the Fallen looked down at Styx's vulnerable form.
Have you been drinking?
Styx didn't answer, shakingly pushing herself back onto her feet. The waterworks began full force, and Styx coughed to cover up a sob.
She left. She was here all of 5 minutes and she left.
Styx's balance wavered, and Evelyn quickly entered the cabin to catch the Watcher as she fell.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Who left?
Despite asking, Evelyn already had a pretty good idea of who it was. She helped Styx back onto the couch and sat her down, then sat next to her, rubbing her back. Styx sniffled.
Z- Zoe, I...
She cleared her throat.
I've resigned myself to the fact she doesn't care what happens to her, but...
Styx turned toward Evelyn.
Do you remember when I picked you up earlier today, face down the river? What I told you?
Evelyn felt her breath hitch in her throat for a moment. She'd never seen the Watcher so miserable and upset.
The part about beaching the ferry and being attacked by wild animals?
Styx grabbed Evelyn's shoulders, her vision almost entirely blinded by the tears leaking down her face.
I wasn't attacked by animals. I was attacked by some fucking guy. He tried to...
Styx cleared her throat again. The suspense was not doing anything good for Evelyn's wordy, though.
Take your time, Styx.
She continued to rub the Watcher's back. Styx pulled back a bit, hugging herself tightly.
He tried to suck out my soul or something. I thought Zoe would come save me. She always led me to believe that if I were in trouble, she'd know. I only survived because he got distracted by some animal, and I...
Styx looked down at her left hand, gripping it with her might.
Somehow,
Styx was suddenly surprised by Evelyn pulling her down onto her lap and stroking her hair.
Shh. Whatever happens, Styx, you're not in the right mental state to be dwelling on it. I can tell you from experience there are better times to think about these things.
Styx pulled her knees up a bit, hugging them.
How would you know?
Evelyn let out a small laugh and tapped the side of her corroded halo.
Ha! Duh. Warpstone addict.
Evelyn sighed softly and kept stroking Styx's hair.
I'm sure Zoe loves you. She just has her own weird way of showing it. She thinks she's top of the world, and anything she wants, she'll get and keep easily. She was like that even before we...
Evelyn gently clamped a hand over Styx's mouth.
Like I said, there are things one shouldn't dwell on, especially you when you're drunk and depressed like this.
Evelyn started rubbing Styx's side. They sat like that for a little bit, in silence. Styx's eyelids eventually started to flutter. Evelyn started to move her back onto the couch, but Styx gripped her arm.
Evelyn, you stay here. Just for the night. Please.
Evelyn hesitated, then smiled softly.
Sure. You did offer sleepovers.
Evelyn made Styx let go, then stood up.
I'm sleeping in the chair, but I'll be here by your side.
Styx nodded slowly, readjusting herself to lay on the couch as cozily as possible. Evelyn snapped her fingers, and the warpstone chandelier darkened. Holding her wings, she sat down on the chair and put her feet up on the table. As much as she wanted to crush a warpstone right now, she decided against it. She could last the night, for Styx's sake.
Good night.
The Fallen could barely make out Styx's drunken and exhausted speech, but she heard it well enough.
Sleep well, Wolfie.
Styx had fallen asleep on her arm, so that it laid outward off the couch. Evelyn hesitated for a few moments, but after tapping Styx's hand a few times to make sure she'd fully succumbed to slumber, Evelyn gently gripped Styx's hand and closed her own eyes.
I hope you have good dreams.
Right. And on that note, I think we'll cap it off here for this week and pick it up next week.
Can't wait for next week. Look at all the fucking Icelandic I have to read.
Oh, goodness. Yes, I see that. Yes. Right. We'll pick up with Chapter 9, The Machine Demon, next week. But everybody on my side of stream, Zoe is linked there in the stream description. So do click that and give her a follow, please. And those of you who haven't on Zoe's side, do give me a follow, Lord Rexworth, all one word. All of my links are available at lordrexworth.com. That's lordrexworth.com. Give us both a follow on Twitter, at Zoe the Demon Fox and at Lord Rexworth. And I think on that note, we should find someone to raid.
I'm not gonna end my stream yet because it's only been 2 hours.
Ah, all right. Well, I'd best be jumping off. Let me find somebody that I can actually. You know what? I'll just raid everybody into your stream, Zoe. And they can just hang out with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun, and I can't wait for next time.
Yes, yes, I enjoyed this immensely. Hopefully my performance was overall up to par.
It was.
Good. Good to know.
It helps that my villains tend to be British, so...
It's a common trope, but at the same time, ever so fun. All right. Let's see here. Let me find... Punch in the raid code here. All right, my side of chat. We will raid into Zoe's stream. Enjoy the rest of your time with her. I will see everyone tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, on YouTube for Kinda Sus with my gen mate Mimo from Project Estadia, part of his, be a guest on his podcast. And then don't miss 8 p.m. Friday, Gravity Circuit. And then Saturday will be Power Wash Simulator with Genevieve Oso back on Twitch. And finally, we'll be recording my own podcast Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Until then, thank you, Zoe. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I'm Lord Rexworth, wishing you all the best, and God bless.
Raid aside, what do you think of the book so far?